And finally, new rule: casting directors have to stop listening to the casting police and go back to doing their job, which is picking the best actor for the role. Now, I mention this because a lot of people lately are either apologizing for or calling on others to apologize for playing roles they call appropriation. James Franco was just chosen to play Fidel Castro, and John Leguizamo posted, "No more appropriation. Boycott. This is fucked up. I don't got a problem with Franco, but he ain't Latino." Okay, but John Leguizamo is Colombian American. He ain't a Venetian, but he played one. He ain't a French little person or an Italian plumber, but he played them too because he's an actor. Why the hell do you think people become actors? Because they want to spend their life not being who they are.
Good morning. It's Monday, Medal of Honor Monday, July the 24th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have local news, my take, no free lunch, the rape of the mind, Newsmax, Fox News, Vivek Ramaswamy, and the Medal of Honor. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
Nor during the age of innovation have the poor gotten poorer, as people are always saying. On the contrary, the poor have been the chief beneficiaries of modern capitalism. It is an irrefutable historical finding, obscured by the logical truth that the profits from innovation go in the first act mostly to the bourgeois rich. Deirdre N. McCloskey. The sequence of events here is important. The rich do historically profit first from new innovations. This reflects a logical and entirely non-controversial fact that the creators of innovations and those most engaged in the use of the tools that are themselves being innovated feel the benefits most in the initial phase. But that the benefits of free enterprise by degree include the poor is a fact so evident in history it is only a lack of care for proportion that would disguise this fact. The change in quality of life for the rich may be bothersome to our covetous spirits, but that does not change the fact that systemically free markets have made the poor exponentially less poor, and we should thank God for this.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. So who is the true conservative? He is the person that has the courage of his convictions and is confident in what he knows. He is the person that understands that culture trumps politics. He's not selfish, but minds his own business. He does not go looking for trouble. He is alert. He curbs his curiosity, and he acts like an adult. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He is judgmental and moralizes. He refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why, rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American, and he is better than the socialist. He's a better friend, father, brother, family member, and a better person, period. You have to know that being a true conservative is best, or you are wasting your time. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now this from local news. Just after this commercial.
Welcome back. There have now been more than 400 mass shootings in the U.S. this year. This is according to the Gun Violence Archive.
So there you go. The 400 gun shootings. No, it's 400 murders, 400 mass murders, 400 serial murders, however you care to describe it, but you have to describe it as a crime. This is being misreported. This has been being reported in a way that is slanted towards gun control and ultimately gun confiscation. We, the good guys, cannot win an argument about gun violence. It's impossible. The only way we can win this argument is to make sure that it is framed as an argument about crime and crime control. Thank you. Back in a minute. And now this.
Another bus full of migrants from Texas arrived at Union Station over the weekend.
And again, it's wrong. It's being misreported. There are no migrants. Humans don't migrate. Animals migrate. So the lady that's reporting this is wrong. The correct way she should have reported this is it is illegal immigrants. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
The need to collapse. The vocabulary of psychopathology contains many sophisticated terms for the wish to succumb to mental pressure, such as wish to regress, dependency need, mental masochism, unconscious death wish, and many others. For our purposes, however, it is enough to state that every individual has two opposing needs which operate simultaneously. The need to be independent, to be oneself, and the need not to be oneself, not to be anybody at all, not to resist mental pressure. The need to be inconspicuous, to disappear, and to be swallowed up by society is a common one. In its simplest form, we can see it all around us as a tendency to conform. Under ordinary circumstances, the need for anonymity is balanced by the need for individuality, and the mentally healthy person is one who can walk the fine line between them. But in the frightening, lonely situations in which the victims of menticidal terror find themselves, situations which have a nightmare quality, which are crammed with dangers so tremendous they cannot be grasped or understood because there's nobody to explain or reassure, the wish to collapse, to let go, to not be there becomes almost irresistible. This experience was reported by many concentration camp victims. They had come into camp with one unanswered question burning in their minds. Why has all this happened to me? Their need for a sense of direction, for a feeling of purpose and meaning was unsatisfied, and hence they could not maintain their personalities. They let themselves go in what psychopathology calls a depersonalization syndrome, a general feeling of having lost complete control of themselves and their own existence. What Pavlovian conditioning can do in applying artificial confusion can be done too by one shocking experience. For what? They asked themselves. What is the meaning of all this suffering? And gradually they sank dully into a paralyzed state of semi-oblivion we call depression. The self-destructive needs take over. The Nazis were clever and unscrupulous in taking advantage of this need to collapse. The humiliation of concentration camp life, the repeated suggestion that the Allies were as good as beaten, these conspired to convince the inmates that there would be no end to this pointless suffering, no victorious conclusion to the war, no future to their lives. The desire to break down, to give in, becomes almost insurmountable when a man feels that this horrible, marginal existence is something permanent, that he cannot look toward a more personal goal, that he has to adjust to this dulling, degrading life forever. At the moment faith and hope disappear, man breaks down. There are tragic stories of concentration camp victims who fixed all their expectations on the idea that liberation would come on Christmas 1944 and aimed their entire existence toward that day. When it passed and they were still incarcerated, many of them simply collapsed and died. This tendency to collapse also serves as a protective device against danger. The victim seems to think, if my torturer doesn't notice me, he will leave me alone. And yet, this very feeling of anonymity, the sense of losing one's personality, of being useless, unnoticed and unwanted, also results in depression and apathy. Man's need to be an individual can never be completely killed.
And that was The Need to Collapse from The Rape of the Mind. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart Varney's My Take.
Right from the start of the Hunter Biden laptop story, the president has denied any involvement with his son's business dealings. Watch the president respond to questions from Fox's Peter Doocy. Roll it.
How many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
Did Hunter Biden commit a crime? Have you spoken to your son, Mr. President-elect?
Proud of my son.
Are you confident your son Hunter did nothing wrong?
I'm confident.
You still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation and a smear campaign, like you said?
Yes. God love you, man. You're a one-horse pony.
So you have denial and an insult, too. Okay, fair enough. Now look at this. Another blockbuster story from New York Post's Miranda Devine. Hunter reportedly put his then vice president father on speakerphone 24 times to talk to his business associates. The man making that charge is Devon Archer, Hunter's business partner. We're hearing reports that he is scheduled to testify to the House Oversight Committee this week. There's a lot more detail in the Post article, but let's not be confused by who said what to whom and when. For clarity, I've zeroed in on just one item because it exposes the lack of truth in the president's statements. He said he didn't know about it. He said he hadn't even talked about it. Devon Archer's testimony, if it happens, could put those denials in a whole new light. This is not going away. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
So I am the true conservative, and I am not I'm not neutral. So start off that way. And I'm of two minds about this. First of all, I'm really thrilled to hear that there's going to be a person that's going to testify that, in effect, President Biden lied And so finally he gets caught in one of his lies. He has lied his way to the White House. He has bluffed his way all the way through his political career, all the way to the White House. And finally he's going to get his bluff called, and hopefully, from a conservative perspective, I hope that he finally is forced from office in disgrace. Now, I'm also an American citizen, and I am saddened and I don't know what else to say. Frustrated, saddened, frustrated, embarrassed, humiliated as an American citizen by what President Biden is doing and has done, about the fact that, and I'm embarrassed for democracy in general, that this is the kind of thing that democracy produces. You know, it's all about a popularity contest. Doesn't matter whether you're honest, doesn't matter what your character is, so long as you're popular, you get elected, reelected, and you finally end up as President of the United States. But I'm embarrassed, I'm humiliated every time that President Biden makes an appearance. I'm embarrassed and humiliated as an American citizen. And if he ends up chased from office in disgrace, there will be a part of me that is going to be embarrassed and humiliated, not only as a citizen, but as a supporter of democracy. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Newsmax.
Turns out the DOJ and the FBI have been hiding a great deal from the American people. And the Democrats are invested in this cover-up effort. How many pro-Americans are left inside our once trusted institutions? That's the question we ask in today's preamble. Leftists are melting down after Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene showed pictures, allegedly, from Hunter Biden's laptop from hell at a congressional hearing last week. The photos were of Hunter and a suspected prostitute that he'd reportedly hired. He documented the encounter, as he did with many other things on that laptop that he abandoned. But the left wing wasn't ashamed or aghast or condemning of Hunter Biden's alleged debaucherous and illegal activity. They were instead angry at the GOP for exposing the malign activity and informing the rest of America about it.
I know you saw the disgusting moment in the hearing when Marjorie Taylor Greene displayed those nude photos of Hunter Biden. Obviously, we're not going to show them here on this program, but her Republican colleagues have not condemned her for it. And we know that she has been name-calling. She uses profanities. What do you make of this new standard of decorum in the GOP-controlled House? I mean, this is the party that claims to be the party of family values and decency.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who had the misfortune of actually seeing that portion of the hearing, it was disgusting.
In Democrats' left-wing ruled America, the illegal activities of the rich and powerful, they are not condemned. Those who stand against the illegal activities, they are condemned. That's the new left-wing order. Last week, we learned that according to a leaked FD 1023, that Joe and Hunter Biden coerced a Ukrainian oligarch into paying them $10 million to fire a prosecutor who was investigating Hunter Biden's then company, Burisma. Joe Biden arrogantly bragging about fulfilling his end of the alleged illegal scheme for all the world to see.
They were walking out to the press conference and said, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well,
That's not all. Over the weekend, reported details on Joe Biden and the agents in our government who were trying to make sure he gets away with accused crimes hit a new low. A source confirming to the Federalist that when the Pittsburgh FBI office briefed the Delaware U.S. Attorney's Office on evidence implicating Hunter and Joe Biden in a criminal bribery scheme, the agents also told the Delaware team they had already corroborated several aspects of the claims of criminal influence peddling. In other words, The FBI has already reportedly verified many aspects of the criminal allegations against Joe Biden, the leader of the Democrat Party. They just sat on it in an apparent effort to make sure Democrats get away with selling out America for foreign cash. You know, there's an old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. It appears that's the business the DOJ and FBI are in now, denying justice in service to something that is corrupt, vile, and anti-American. But I should note that the leak of the damning FD 1023 came from inside the Department of Injustice, according to Chuck Grassley. Sources tell me that there is nobody left at Main Justice who is pro-American or pro-Constitution. My sources say the leak likely came from FBI. So that begs the question, just how big is the revolt against the corruption of the DOJ and FBI within the Bureau?
And that was Chris Salcedo from Newsmax. And this kind of story makes me mad, and I also find it to be very embarrassing. It's embarrassing that the people of the United States, of our own free will, elected such a horrible man. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now Fox News.
The governor made it very clear that he has the sovereign authority to protect his state under the U.S. Constitution, and that's what we're doing right now, and the governor's not backing down. That's an example of strong leadership, and the governor also made it very clear that if the federal government truly cares about human life, then they would follow and they would enforce immigration laws, but they refuse to do that, and that's why the state of Texas has been stepping up for the past 2 years, and even now with our Texas State Troopers, our National Guard, all of the out-of-state agencies that have supported us from the very beginning. They are the ones on the front lines every single day. They are rescuing illegal immigrants that are crossing the river, knowing the dangers, knowing the risk, but they still continue to cross, and they are the ones out there risking their lives trying to rescue and prevent illegal border crossings, rescuing children that are left abandoned at the riverbank by smugglers, arresting smugglers that are actually extorting and robbing some of these illegal immigrants as they're bringing them across. It's the state of Texas. It's our men and women of the Texas Department of Public Safety, National Guard, and all the other agencies that are out here right now on the front lines doing the work that most don't want to do. The governor made it very clear.
And that was Fox News about a floating border barrier, and the Department of Justice, President Biden's Department of Justice threatened to sue over this. On what basis, I don't know. But all I can say is that this is true conservatism in action. True conservatives try to solve problems at the lowest possible level. We're not going to always look to Capitol Hill to solve our problems. We get into a jam, we try to solve it ourselves, and then work our way out. And this is exactly the kind of thing that Texas is doing, and I'm glad they're doing it, and I wish them success. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Newsmax interviewing a former New York City police commissioner.
Just how big is the revolt against the corruption of the DOJ and FBI within the Bureau? For that answer, let's return to former NYPD Commissioner Bernie Kerik. Bernie, always fantastic to have you. Let's take this one step at a time. You have several contacts inside the FBI. About that new report revealing that the FBI has already corroborated several of the claims made against Hunter and Joe Biden in one of the known FD 1023s. The form exposes how the Bidens received $10 million in criminal bribes to protect Ukrainian company Burisma from, quote, problems. And as we showed, it seems that Joe Biden delivered on his end, getting Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin, who was investigating Hunter Biden's company Burisma, fired. The White House claims these accusations have been debunked, and that's a lie. But if the reporting is true, the FBI knows it's a lie. Has the Bureau fallen so far that they'd protect a Democrat who's guilty of selling out our nation for foreign cash?
I think, honestly, Chris, I think the upper echelon of the Bureau has fallen, completely fallen. And I think what's happening is lower level investigators, people on the bottom, they've had it. I think they've had enough. I think And that's what you see in these whistleblowers with Grassley and others. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing a lot of the Bureau agents coming forward, either publicly coming out or going behind the scenes and getting stuff out to the committees like that form and that report. That report is far more than just damning. That report says that they knew, that they sat on it, they suppressed it, they concealed it from the American people, and they've done everything to hide it. If this was a municipal police department or a state police department anywhere in this country, the FBI would have handcuffs on them and lock them up and anybody involved. The problem is we don't have anyone overseeing the FBI or DOJ that can hold them accountable. That's what's making everybody crazy right now.
Yeah, I want to expand on this. The only reason we even have information on an agency cover-up is because of at least one patriot inside the DOJ, according to Grassley. Our sources confirm that it's unlikely that there's anyone left who is pro-American in Main Justice. So I suspect the leak came from inside the FBI. Here's the question. Is there a revolt against Christopher Wray and his lieutenants and their apparent left-wing bias? And if so, Bernie, how big do you think this revolt is?
I think there is, based on what I'm hearing from retired agents who have an enormous amount of respect for the line agents, who have an enormous amount of reach within the Bureau. I hear constantly now that there is a revolt. And as far as how big that revolt is, I think whatever it is now, it's growing day by day. Because when you stand up, take an oath to the Constitution on behalf of the FBI, that you're working for the FBI, you anticipate you're all about law and order, you're all about upholding the Constitution, and then you're told by some superiors, hold it, hide that, conceal this, suppress that, don't mention this, don't talk about that. You know, this is completely insane. This is insane. I've never seen this in any agency in this country where there wasn't some sort of accountability, where somebody came in and locked people up for doing it. Like I said, the problem is it's the FBI. They're the ones that's supposed to be basically the holders of law and order for the country. And they're the ones doing it.
Right, exactly. Now that the Republicans are releasing more incriminating information on the Bidens, revealing that Hunter Biden would dial in then Vice President Biden into meetings with his overseas business partners, and he's reportedly done this at least a dozen times. Hunter Biden's ex-business partner, Devin Archer, was set to testify on this to the House Oversight Committee, but is now rescheduled. This is the fourth time he's done this. What is your read on the game Archer's playing here, Bernie?
Well, listen, I think the bottom line is it's not even a game anymore. This is the reality of what was going on. Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Jim Biden should be in handcuffs. They should be in handcuffs. I'm curious to see how this plea deal works out for Hunter. Because really, if the FBI was doing their job, you can't indict Hunter without indicting his father, without indicting Jim. You can't.
And that was the New York City former New York City Police Commissioner being interviewed on Newsmax. And there's more coming this week. Tomorrow and Wednesday is when they were supposed to be getting some testimony about more testimony on the Oversight Committee about Hunter Biden's business dealings and his including of then, I guess, Vice President Biden in on these meetings. So we shall have to see how that goes. I'm looking forward to it. I hope that President Biden gets a black eye in the short run. I think the justice that we'll get out of this will be worth the national embarrassment. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little bit of Vivek Ramaswamy.
So what you see today is really just the beginnings of that fundamental reorganization and revamp of the federal government. I believe in giving my predecessors credit for what they accomplished. That includes President Trump, for exposing the rot of a deep state, an administrative state that was previously not exposed by either party. He rolled that log over. We saw what crawled out. But if you're going to roll that log over, you better be willing to bring the pesticide. And that is what I'm bringing to the federal government. Because if you strike the swamp strikes back. Unless you're actually willing to see the job through. And I think that takes a unique combination. It is why I'm in this race. I think it takes someone who, yes, definitely comes from outside the government. Has to be a CEO. I've been a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company that I built from scratch. I've had thousands of people reporting into me. I understand that if somebody works for me and I can't fire them, that means they don't work for me. Right? That means I work for them. Because I'm responsible for what they do without having any authority to change it. So I'm not going to run the executive branch that way. It will take that outsider, and Trump brought that. But it will also take a leader who has a first personal understanding of the Constitution and the laws of this country. And the reason that's required is that every advisor that comes out of the traditional Washington, D.C. bureaucracy will tell me all the reasons why I can't do the things I've told you about tonight. They'll use excuses like civil service protections. It takes a president who actually understands that those civil service protections protect individuals, but they do not protect entire divisions of the federal government. They will say that there are certain impoundment prevention restrictions, that you have to spend money that Congress has appropriated. We'll write our budget requests in the right way. So I think that's a unique combination. That is what calls me into this race. And at the age of 37, not quite as young as you, but I've got fresh legs. I'm not yet jaded and cynical. We're going to get through and see this through. And then, I think my kids will be close to your age by the time we're out of office in January 2033. And they can grow up in a country that, again, is the country that our founding fathers envisioned in 1776.
And that was Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm very excited about Mr. Ramaswamy. I think he'll make an excellent cabinet member on the Trump team. But he is somebody who is in the Trump mold without coming across as some type of a apple polisher. That he's just trying to glad hand or whatnot. He comes across as being genuine, that he genuinely agrees with the same ideas and principles that former President Donald Trump held. And what I'm really, really excited about is the people that are truly great, whatever endeavor they happen to be in, whether it's politics, sports, or whatever, are the people that change in this particular case, change politics. Former President Trump has set a precedent that other people are now following, in this particular case, Vivek Ramaswamy. You see that in sports. It's a better examples like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali changed boxing. He brought a style to boxing that was emulated and is still emulated to this day. And that's what we're seeing again with President Trump. He brings a style and he brings character to the post that is being emulated by other people. In this particular case, Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now President Bush awards the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Let us pray. The 24th Psalm reads, "Who may ascend the hill of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to an idol or swear by what is false. He will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from God his Savior." Lord, we are thankful today that the last hill your servant, Lieutenant Michael Murphy, ascended was not in Kunar province, Afghanistan, but was in fact the holy hill that leads to your eternal presence. We will always be grateful for your gift of Michael to us, and we will never forget his courage in life as well as in death. Bless Michael's family, O Lord, Daniel, Maureen, and John, as we thank and honor them for sharing with us such an extraordinary young man. We pray for the entire SEAL community today, especially for the families of those who lost their own heroes on the events of 27 and 28 June 2005. Bless this ceremony and all those who have worked so hard to rightly recognize the indomitable spirit and inspirational courage of Lieutenant Michael Murphy. Amen.
Please be seated. Good afternoon and welcome to the White House. The Medal of Honor is the highest military decoration that a president can bestow. It recognizes gallantry that goes above and beyond the call of duty in the face of an enemy attack. The tradition of awarding this honor began during the Civil War, and many of those who have received the medal have given their lives in the action that earned it. Today we add Lieutenant Michael Murphy's name to the list of recipients who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Deep in the mountains of Afghanistan, this brave officer gave his life in defense of his fellow Navy SEALs. 2 years later, the story of his sacrifice humbles and inspires all who hear it. And by presenting Michael Murphy's family with the Medal of Honor that he earned, a grateful nation remembers the courage of this proud Navy SEAL. I welcome the Vice President, Senator Ted Stevens, Senator Chuck Schumer from Lieutenant Murphy's home state. I appreciate very much the fact that Congressman Tim Bishop from Lieutenant Murphy's district is with us today. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the fact that Deputy Secretary Gordon England has joined us, Secretary Pete Guerin of the Army, Secretary Don Winter of the Navy, Secretary Mike Wynn of the Air Force, Admiral Mike Mullen, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Gary Ruffhead, Chief of Naval Operations, and all who wear the nation's uniform, welcome. I appreciate the fact that we've got Barney Barnum, Tom Kelly, Tommy Norris, and Mike Thornton, Medal of Honor recipients with us today. We do welcome Dan Murphy and Maureen Murphy, father and mother of Michael Murphy, John Murphy, his brother, and other family members that are with us today. It's my honor to welcome all the friends and comrades of Lieutenant Michael Murphy here to the White House. And I want to thank Chaplain Bob Burt, Chief of Chaplains, for his opening prayer. Looking back on his childhood in Patchogue, New York, you might say that Michael Murphy was born to be a Navy SEAL. SEALs get their name from operating by sea, air, and land. And even as a toddler, Michael could find his way through any obstacle. When he was just 18 months old, he darted across a neighbor's yard and dove into the swimming pool. By the time his frantic parents reached him, Michael had swum to the other side with a big smile on his face. As he grew older, Michael learned to swim from one side of a nearby lake to the other, and he developed into a talented all-around athlete. But beyond his physical strength, Michael Murphy was blessed with a powerful sense of right and wrong. This sense came from devoted parents who taught him to love his neighbor and defend those who could not defend themselves. Michael took these lessons to heart. One day in school, he got into a scuffle sticking up for a student with a disability. It's the only time his parents ever got a phone call from the principal, and they couldn't have been prouder. Michael's passion for helping others led him to become a caring brother, a tutor, a lifeguard, and eventually a member of the United States Armed Forces. Michael's decision to join the military wasn't an easy one for his family. As a Purple Heart recipient during Vietnam, Michael's father understood the sacrifices that accompany a life of service. He also understood that his son was prepared to make these sacrifices. After graduating from Penn State with honors, Michael accepted a commission in the Navy and later set off for SEAL training. Fewer than a third of those who begin this intense training program graduate to become Navy SEALs. But there was little doubt about the determined lieutenant from New York. And in 2002, Michael earned his Navy SEAL Trident. Michael also earned the respect of his men. They remember a wisecracking friend who went by Mikey or Murph. They remember a patriot who wore a New York City firehouse patch on his uniform in honor of the heroes of 9/11. And they remember an officer who respected their opinions and led them with an understated yet unmistakable sense of command. Together, Michael and his fellow SEALs deployed multiple times around the world in the war against the extremists and radicals. And while their missions were often carried out in secrecy, their love of country and devotion to each other was always clear. On June 28, 2005, Michael would give his life for these ideals. While conducting surveillance on a mountain ridge in Afghanistan, he and 3 fellow SEALs were surrounded by a much larger enemy force. Their only escape was down the side of a mountain, and the SEALs launched a valiant counterattack while cascading from cliff to cliff. But as the enemy closed in, Michael recognized that the survival of his men depended on calling back to the base for reinforcements. With complete disregard for his own life, he moved into a clearing where his phone would get reception. He made the call, and Michael then fell under heavy fire. Yet his grace and upbringing never deserted him. Though severely wounded, he said thank you before hanging up and returned to the fight before losing his life. Unfortunately, the helicopter carrying the reinforcements never reached the scene. It crashed after being struck by a rocket-propelled grenade. And in the end, more Americans died in Afghanistan on June 28, 2005 than on any other day since the beginning of Operation Enduring Freedom. This day of tragedy also has the sad distinction of being the deadliest for Navy Special Warfare Forces since World War II. One of Michael's fellow SEALs did make it off the mountain ridge. He was one of Michael's closest friends. Petty Officer Marcus Luttrell of Texas, author of a riveting book called Lone Survivor, put it this way: Mikey was the best officer I ever knew, an iron-souled warrior of colossal and almost unbelievable courage in the face of the enemy. For his courage, we award Lieutenant Michael Murphy the First Medal of Honor for combat in Afghanistan. And with this medal, we acknowledge a debt that will not diminish with time and can never be repaid. Our nation is blessed to have volunteers like Michael, who risk their lives for our freedom. We're blessed to have mothers and fathers like Maureen and Dan Murphy, who raise sons of such character and courage. And we're blessed with the mercy of a loving God who comforts all those who grieve. And now I ask Michael's parents to join me on stage, and the military aide will read the citation.
The President of the United States of America, in the name of Congress, takes pride in presenting the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy, United States Navy. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as the leader of a special reconnaissance element with Naval Special Warfare Task Unit Afghanistan on 27 and 28 June 2005. While leading a mission to locate a high-level anti-coalition militia leader, Lieutenant Murphy demonstrated extraordinary heroism in the face of grave danger in the vicinity of Asadabad, Konar Province, Afghanistan. On 28 June 2005, operating in an extremely rugged, enemy-controlled area, Lieutenant Murphy's team was discovered by anti-coalition militia sympathizers who revealed their position to Taliban fighters. As a result, between 30 and 40 enemy fighters besieged his 4-member team. Demonstrating exceptional resolve,
Lieutenant Murphy valiantly led his men in engaging the large enemy force. The ensuing fierce firefight resulted in numerous enemy casualties, as well as the wounding of all 4 members of his team. Ignoring his own wounds and demonstrating exceptional composure, Lieutenant Murphy continued to lead and encourage his men. When the primary communicator fell mortally wounded, Lieutenant Murphy repeatedly attempted to call for assistance for his beleaguered teammates. Realizing the impossibility of communicating in the extreme terrain, and in the face of almost certain death, he fought his way into an open terrain to gain a better position to transmit a call. This deliberate, heroic act deprived him of cover, exposing him to direct enemy fire. Finally achieving contact with his headquarters, Lieutenant Murphy maintained his exposed position while he provided his location and requested immediate support for his team. In his final act of bravery, he continued to engage the enemy until he was mortally wounded, gallantly giving his life for his country and for the cause of freedom. By his selfless leadership, courageous actions, and extraordinary devotion to duty, Lieutenant Murphy reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service.
And that was President Bush awarding the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant Michael Murphy. And I always feel a combination of pride and sadness at these events. Pride in the individual and in our country, and sadness in terms of what the individuals have had to sacrifice to get the award. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.